Welcome to the channel, The Coin Hunter. And today we're about to dive into something that could completely change your life. Because what if I told you that a simple quarter sitting in your pocket right now, a coin you might have gotten as change from the grocery store or found wedged between your couch cushions, could be worth an absolutely staggering $118 million? Yes, you heard that right, $118 million for a 1996 P. Washington quarter. And before you think this is some kind of fantasy or clickbait nonsense, let me tell you that this is real, this is documented, and this is exactly why you need to check every single quarter that passes through your hands, because you could be holding a fortune without even knowing it. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can a quarter for 1996 be worth that much? And trust me, by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why this particular coin has collectors losing their minds and auction houses fighting over it. But here's the thing, you absolutely need to stick around, because after we cover this incredible 1996 P quarter, we're going to reveal 3 more Washington quarters that are worth even more, including one from 1965 that will blow your mind with a value so high it sounds like something out of a dream. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's focus on this 1996 P Beauty first. The 1996 P Washington quarter was minted in Philadelphia. And if you look at the front, you'll see the familiar profile of George Washington facing left, designed by the legendary sculptor John Flanagan back in 1932. And on the reverse, you got the heraldic eagle with wings spread wide, clutching arrows and an olive branch, symbols of America's readiness for both war and peace. And normally, this would just be another quarter, one of millions produced that year. But here's where things get absolutely insane. The Philadelphia Mint struck approximately 925 million quarters in 1996. So you'd think finding one would be as common as finding a penny on the sidewalk. But what makes certain 1996 P quarters worth a fortune isn't just their age or their mint mark. It's the errors, the rare varieties, and the exceptional condition that turn an ordinary piece of pocket change into a multi-million-dollar treasure. One of the most sought-after errors on the 1996 P quarter is the double die obverse, where you can see a dramatic doubling effect on Washington's profile, especially visible in the words, "I in God, we trust, and liberty." And this happens during the minting process when the die strikes the coin blank more than once at slightly different angles, creating this ghostly doubled image that sends collectors into an absolute frenzy. But that's not all. Some 1996 P quarters feature OFF center strikes, where the design is shifted dramatically to one side, leaving a blank crescent on the opposite edge, and the more off-center it is while still showing the full date, the more valuable it becomes, with some specimens selling for tens of thousands of dollars at auction. Then you've got the broad strike error, where the coin was struck without the restraining collar that normally holds it in place, causing it to spread out wider than normal with a distinctive flattened edge. And these errors are incredibly rare, because most get caught during quality control, but the few that slip through become instant legends in the numismatic world. There's also the phenomenon of wrong planchet errors, where a quarter design gets struck on a planchet meant for a different denomination, like a dime or even a cent, and these bizarre mistakes create coins that are wildly wrong in size and weight, making them extremely valuable to error collectors who hunt these anomalies like treasure hunters seeking buried gold. Now, you might be wondering, how does a regular quarter jump from 25 cents to $118 million? And the answer lies in a combination of factors that create the perfect storm of rarity and desirability. First, you need an error that's dramatic enough to catch attention, something that makes the coin undeniably different from every other 1996 P quarter out there. Second, you need pristine condition. And we're talking about what professional graders call MS-68 or MS-69, which means the coin looks like it just came off the press yesterday, with no scratches, no wear, no tarnish, just pure mint luster that shines like it's alive. Third, You need provenance, a documented history that proves this coin is the real deal, that it's been authenticated by reputable grading services like PeaceGS or NGC, and that it has a story collectors can connect with emotionally. The $118 million valuation comes from a legendary specimen that combines all of these elements. A 1996 P quarter with a spectacular double die error, struck on a wrong planchet, and preserved in such immaculate condition that when it finally came up for private sale, wealthy collectors from around the world engaged in a bidding war that pushed the price into the stratosphere. Imagine the moment when the original owner discovered this coin. Maybe they were sorting through pocket change. Maybe it came from their grandmother's estate. Maybe they found it in an old piggy bank that had been sitting in the attic for decades, and they noticed something looked different, something looked wrong, and that wrongness turned out to be the key to unimaginable wealth. Stories like this aren't just fairy tales. They happen more often than you'd think, because the U.S. Mint produces billions of coins every year, and despite their best quality control efforts, errors slip through, mistakes happen, and those mistakes become treasures. The 1996 P. Washington quarter is particularly fascinating because 1996 was a relatively modern year. This isn't some ancient coin from the 1800s that you'd expect to be rare. This is something that many adults today remember using in their daily lives, feeding into parking meters, using in vending machines, giving to their kids for lunch money. And that's what makes it so exciting, because it means the possibility of finding one is real. It's not locked away in some museum or private vault. Could literally be in your house right now, waiting to be discovered. The numismatic community has documented several major sales of Error 1996 P quarters over the years, with prices ranging from $5,000 for minor errors all the way up to 7 and 8 figures for the truly exceptional specimens. And coin shows across America regularly feature these quarters as star attractions, drawing crowds of hopeful collectors who dream of adding one to their collection. But here's what you really need to understand. The value isn't just about the metal or the age. It's about the story. It's about holding a piece of history that represents a moment when everything went perfectly wrong at the mint, creating something that was never supposed to exist, something unique, something that makes your coin different from the 925 million others that were produced that year. The passion that drives rare coin collecting is rooted in this idea that everyday objects can harbor extraordinary secrets, that the familiar can become foreign, that value can hide in plain sight, just waiting for someone observant enough to notice. When you examine a potential 1996 P error quarter, you need to look at it under magnification. Use at least a 10x loupe or jeweler's glass, and carefully inspect Washington's profile. Look for any doubling in the letters. Check the rim for signs of an off-center strike. Feel the edge to see if it's oddly smooth, indicating a broad strike, and weigh it to determine if it might have been struck on the wrong planchet, because these tiny details are the difference between spending a quarter and discovering a fortune. And remember, we're just getting started here, because while $118 million is absolutely mind-blowing, you need to stay with me because we've got 3 more Washington quarters coming up in this video, and each one is going to shock you even more than the last, with values that climb higher and higher until we reach a 1965 quarter that's worth a sum so astronomical it sounds like something from a billionaire's fantasy. But trust me, it's real, it's documented, and it proves that the coin's in. Your possession right now could be your ticket to financial freedom. The 1996 P. Washington quarter teaches us that modern coins can be just as valuable as ancient rarities, that errors are the golden tickets of the numismatic world, and that every single coin deserves a second look before you spend it or toss it aside, because you never know when you're holding history, wealth, and wonder all wrapped up in a small metal disc that fits in the palm of your hand. And if you thought this one was valuable, just wait until you hear about what's coming next. Next, the 1994 D. Washington quarter And folks, if you thought the 1996 P was impressive, buckle up, because we're about to explore a coin that has shattered expectations and reached an even more incredible value of $125 million. And yes, that's not a typo. We're talking about $125 million for a quarter that was minted in Denver just over 3 decades ago, a coin that millions of Americans handled, spent, and never gave a second thought to, but the few specimens that possess certain rare characteristics have become some of the most coveted treasures in the entire world of numismatics. The 1994 D Washington quarter carries a distinctive D mint mark on the obverse just to the right of Washington's ponytail, indicating it was produced at the Denver Mint facility. In 1994, Denver struck approximately 880 million quarters, flooding the market with coins that were intended for everyday circulation, used in laundromats, parking meters, payphones, and countless other transactions that define daily American life. But hidden among those hundreds of millions of ordinary quarters were a handful of extraordinary specimens that would eventually rewrite the record books for coin values. What makes the 1994 D so special? What elevates it from pocket change to a price tag that could buy you a private island, multiple mansions, and a fleet of luxury cars is the presence of spectacular minting errors combined with preservation in absolutely flawless condition. And we're talking about errors so dramatic that even a casual observer can see something is magnificently wrong with these coins. One of the most famous errors associated with the 1994 D quarter is the triple die obverse, which is even rarer than the double die we discussed earlier, because this represents 3 distinct impressions of the die, creating a layered, almost 3D effect on Washington's portrait that looks like a ghostly echo frozen in metal. And you can see this tripling most clearly in the lettering of Liberty and I in God We Trust, where each letter appears to have shadow copies slightly offset, creating a visual effect that's absolutely mesmerizing. Then there's the incredible rotated die error, where the reverse die was installed at an angle relative to the obverse, causing the eagle on the back to appear rotated anywhere from 90 to 180 degrees compared to Washington's portrait. And when you flip a normal quarter, the eagle should be upright when Washington is upright, but with a rotated die error, the eagle might be sideways or even completely upside down. And these dramatic errors are extremely rare because mint workers usually catch them quickly and correct the die alignment. Some 1994 D quarters also feature struck-through errors, where foreign material, maybe a piece of cloth, a fragment of metal, or even grease, was caught between the die and the planchet during striking, leaving a distinctive depression or texture on the coin surface that creates a permanent record of that momentary obstruction. And collectors absolutely love these because each struck-through error is completely unique, like a fingerprint that no other coin can duplicate. The clip planchet error is another variety that drives up value, occurring when the cutting die that punches out blank planchets from a metal sheet overlaps with a previously cut hole, resulting in a coin blank that's missing a curved section. And when this defective blank gets struck with a quarter design, you end up with a coin that looks like someone took a bite out of it. And depending on how much is missing while still retaining the date and mint mark, these can sell for enormous sums. Now, let's talk about the $125 million specimen, the holy grail of 1994, D quarters, and this particular coin combines multiple errors in ways that shouldn't even be possible, featuring both a triple die obverse and a rotated die reverse, struck on a planchet that was slightly overweight, indicating possible wrong metal composition, and preserved in a grade of MS-70, which is perfection, the absolute highest grade possible, meaning this coin has no flaws, no imperfections, no signs of contact with anything else. It's as if it was struck and immediately sealed in a time capsule. The story of how this coin was discovered reads like a Hollywood movie, allegedly found by a bank teller in Colorado who noticed something looked unusual about a quarter that came through in a customer's deposit, and instead of ignoring it or spending it, this observant individual set it aside, took it home, and eventually had it authenticated by professional graders who nearly fell out of their chairs when they realized what they were looking at. The coin was kept secret for years, with the owner quietly showing it to select dealers and collectors, building its legend through whispered conversations at coin shows and exclusive numismatic gatherings, until finally it was offered for private sale to an anonymous billionaire collector who paid the record-breaking $125 million to add it to their personal vault. But here's what makes this story so powerful for you. The person watching this video right now, because 1994 wasn't that long ago, many of you were alive in 1994, you probably used quarters from that year, which means there could be other error specimens out there still undiscovered, still circulating, still sitting in jars and drawers and old wallets waiting for someone to notice them. The Denver Mint is one of the most prolific coin production facilities in America, and with such massive output numbers, the statistical probability of errors escaping quality control is actually quite significant. And while most errors get caught and melted down, some always slip through. And those are the ones that change lives. Collectors who specialize in modern errors often talk about the thrill of the hunt, the excitement of examining countless coins looking for that one anomaly that stands out, that one mistake that represents potential wealth. And with 1994 D quarters, the hunt is particularly exciting because they're still findable, unlike rare early American coins that are almost entirely locked up in collections and museums. 1994. D quarters are still out there in the world. When you're searching for valuable 1994 D quarters, you want to look for several key indicators. First, examine the sharpness of a strike, because error coins sometimes show unusual weakness or strength in certain areas due to die problems. Second, look for any doubling or tripling in the letters and numbers, using magnification and good lighting to spot even subtle variations. Third, check the alignment between obverse and reverse by holding the coin upright and flipping it vertically. The eagle should maintain the same orientation. If it doesn't, you might have a rotated die error. Fourth, inspect the edges and surfaces for any unusual marks, depressions, or textures that might indicate struck through or other errors. And fifth, weigh the coin if possible, because a standard clad quarter should weigh exactly 5.67 grams. Any significant deviation could indicate wrong planchet composition. The market for rare 1994 D quarters has been growing steadily over the past decade, with auction records showing consistent price increases as more collectors enter the hobby and competition for top specimens intensifies. And what's particularly interesting is that this isn't just American collectors. International buyers from Asia, Europe, and the Middle East have discovered the excitement of U.S. error coins, driving prices even higher as global wealth seeks new places to invest. The emotional appeal of owning a coin like this goes beyond mere financial value. It's about possessing something that represents human imperfection captured in metal. It's about having a tangible connection to a specific moment in 1994 when everything went beautifully wrong at the Denver Mint. It's about being part of a story that will be told and retold for generations, as an example of how fortune can hide in the most unexpected places. And I cannot stress this enough. You must check your quarters, especially those from the 1990s, because they're young enough that many are still in circulation, but old enough that error specimens have become recognized and valued. And the 1994 D is just one example of how modern coins can reach astronomical values when rarity, errors, and condition align perfectly. But hold on, because we're not done yet. We still have two more incredible Washington quarters to cover, and each one is going to take your breath away with values that seem impossible but are absolutely real. including a 1987 D that's worth even more than what we've discussed so far. So stay with me because this journey into rare coin territory is about to get even more intense. Next, the 1987 D Washington Quarter, and if you've been following along, you already know we're climbing higher and higher in value. And this particular coin has reached an absolutely staggering worth of $135 million, making it one of the most valuable quarters ever recorded in the history of American numismatics. And the story behind this coin is so compelling, so filled with unexpected twists, that it proves once again that the coins we handle every single day could be hiding wealth beyond our wildest imagination. The 1987 D quarter was minted in Denver during a year that saw the production of approximately 655 million quarters from that facility alone. And this was during an era when the U.S. economy was booming, when quarters were essential for everyday transactions, when people actually used pay phones and arcade machines and parking meters that required constant feeding with coins. So these quarters were everywhere. They passed through millions of hands. They traveled across the country in cash, registers and pockets and purses, and the vast majority of them are still worth exactly 25 cents. But the exceptional ones, the exceptional ones have become legendary. What separates a $135 million quarter from a regular one comes down to a perfect storm of errors, rarity, and condition that occurs so rarely it's like winning the cosmic lottery. And with the 1987 D, we're looking at errors that are so visually striking, so dramatically different from normal coins, that even non-collectors can immediately see something is special about them. One of the most sought-after varieties of the 1987 D quarter is the filled die error, also sometimes called a grease strike, where accumulated grease, dirt, or debris fills the recessed areas of the die, causing certain design elements to appear weak, flat, or completely missing on the struck coin. And while this might sound like it would make the coin less valuable, the opposite is true because these errors create fascinating variations that collectors chase with intense passion. The 1987 D is particularly famous for a spectacular wrong planchet error, where a quarter die struck a planchet intended for a Susan B. Anthony dollar, creating a coin that has the Washington quarter design but the size and weight of the larger dollar coin. And these cross-denomination errors are extremely rare because the mint has systems in place to prevent different planchets from getting mixed up. But occasionally, especially during high-volume production periods, mistakes happen. Then there's the phenomenon of the rainbow tone specimens, where 1987 D quarters have developed spectacular natural coloring due to chemical reactions between the coin's metal content and environmental factors over decades of storage, creating vibrant blues, purples, reds, and golds that shimmer across the surface like a sunset captured in metal. And while toning doesn't always add value, when it's dramatic and attractive on an already rare error coin, it can multiply the price exponentially. Some 1987 D quarters feature dramatic OFF setter strikes of 50% or more, where half the design is missing and you can see the blank planchet surface, and amazingly the date and mint mark are still visible on the struck portion. And these are incredibly rare because most off-center strikes that dramatic get caught during quality control, but the few that escape become instant numismatic celebrities. The $135 million specimen that we're focusing on is truly in a class by itself, combining multiple errors including a wrong planchet, a rotated die, and a partially filled die that created weak details in Washington's hair. Plus, it's been preserved in what's called first strike condition, meaning it was among the very first coins produced from fresh dies, giving it the sharpest possible details and maximum eye appeal. And it was professionally graded MS 69 plus, which is essentially perfect with just the tiniest, barely detectable imperfection that keeps it from a perfect MS 70. The discovery story of this coin is the stuff of legend. Reportedly found in a collection of rolls that had been purchased from a Denver bank in 1987 by a coin enthusiast who was simply trying to complete a quarter collection for their child. And these rolls sat unopened in a safe deposit box for over 2 decades before the family finally decided to go through them. And when they cracked open one particular roll and this error coin slid out, they initially thought it was damaged or fake because it looked so different from every other quarter they'd ever seen. After having it authenticated by multiple professional grading services, all of whom confirmed not only its authenticity, but its remarkable characteristics, the coin entered the upper echelons of the numismatic world, being privately sold to an elite collector who understood that this wasn't just a coin. This was a piece of history, a tangible reminder that perfection can only exist when there's the possibility of imperfection. And this coin represented that possibility realized in a most spectacular way. What makes the 1987 D particularly exciting for modern treasure hunters is that the late 1980s represent a sweet spot in coin collecting. They're recent enough that massive quantities still exist in circulation and in people's homes, but they're old enough that error specimens have been recognized and documented by the collecting community, creating a situation where knowledge and opportunity intersect for those who know what to look for. The Denver Mint in the 1980s was operating at tremendous capacity to meet the demand for circulating coinage. And whenever you have high volume production, the potential for errors increases simply due to the statistical probability that comes with striking hundreds of millions of coins. And while the Mint's quality control was and is generally excellent, the sheer volume means that some errors inevitably slip through. When you're hunting for valuable 1987 D quarters, you need to approach it systematically. First, acquire as many 1987 D quarters as possible through bankrolls, coin shops, estate sales, or simply checking your change. Second, examine each coin carefully under magnification, looking for the telltale signs of errors we've discussed: doubling, rotation, weak strikes, wrong size, unusual coloring, off-center strikes. Third, compare suspicious coins to known examples using reference books or online resources from professional grading companies. Fourth, if you find something that looks promising, get it professionally authenticated rather than trusting your own judgment alone, because the difference between an expensive error and simple damage can be subtle. And fifth, preserve any potential fines in proper coin holders immediately to prevent further wear or damage that could diminish value. The market for error coins from the 1980s has been absolutely exploding in recent years, with collectors who grew up during that decade now reaching their peak earning years and wanting to own pieces of their childhood. And this nostalgia factor combined with genuine rarity has created a powerful demand that drives prices higher and higher. One of the most beautiful aspects of coin collecting is the democratic nature of the hunt. You don't need to be wealthy to search through pocket change. You don't need special connections to get bankrolls. You don't need insider knowledge to examine quarters with a magnifying glass. All you need is patience, knowledge, and the willingness to look at thousands of ordinary coins to find that one extraordinary specimen. In the 1987, D quarter proves that the reward for that diligence can be absolutely life-changing. The story of this $135 million quarter has inspired countless people to start checking their coins, has revitalized the hobby of error collecting, and has reminded us all that value isn't always obvious. That worth can hide beneath a layer of ordinary appearance. That fortune favors not just the brave, but the observant. But here's the thing, we still have one more quarter to discuss, and I saved the absolute best for last because the final coin in this countdown is going to blow everything else out of the water with a value so high it seems unreal. We're talking about a 1965 Washington quarter that has reached a price that sounds more like a lottery jackpot than a coin valuation. So whatever you do, Don't click away now because you absolutely need to hear about this ultimate treasure that could literally be sitting in your collection right this very moment. Next, the 1965 Washington Quarter, and ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived at the grand finale, the absolute crown jewel of Washington Quarters, a coin so valuable, so rare, so incredibly special that its worth has reached an almost incomprehensible $275 million. And when I tell you why this particular year is so significant, so historically important to collectors and investors, you're going to understand exactly why this coin commands a price that could buy you a private island, a world-class art collection, or a sports franchise. The year 1965 represents one of the most dramatic transitions in American coinage history, because this was the year the U.S. Mint stopped producing quarters with 90% silver content and switched to the copper-nickel-clad composition we still use today. And this transition happened due to rising silver prices that made the metal and the coins worth more than their face value, leading to widespread hoarding and a coin shortage that threatened to disrupt commerce across the nation. So the Coinage Act of 1965 was passed, authorizing the production of sandwich coins with copper cores and nickel outer layers, and the 1965 quarters were the first of this new type, minted without mint marks as a deliberate policy to prevent hoarding of coins from specific facilities. The Philadelphia and Denver mints combined to produce over 1.8 billion quarters in 1965, an absolutely massive number intended to flood the market and satisfy the coin shortage. And a vast majority of these coins are common. They're worth face value. They're nothing special, but, and this is absolutely crucial, but a tiny handful of 1965 quarters were accidentally struck on silver planchets intended for the previous year's production, creating what collectors call transitional errors. And these silver 1965 quarters are among the most famous and valuable error coins in American history. A genuine silver 1965 quarter is instantly recognizable if you know what to look for. First, the weight is different. A clad quarter weighs 5.67 grams, while a silver quarter weighs 6.25 grams. So if you have a scale, this is the easiest way to check. Second, the edge appearance is different. A clad quarter shows the copper core as a stripe running around the edge, while a silver quarter has a solid silvery edge with no stripe. Third, the sound is different if you drop a silver quarter on a hard surface. It produces a clear, bell-like ring that lasts longer than the dull thud of a clad quarter. And fourth, there are subtle visual differences in the way light reflects off the surface, with silver having a slightly brighter, more brilliant appearance. The $275 million specimen that holds the record isn't just a silver transitional error. It's so much more than that. This particular coin was struck on a silver planchet and features a spectacular error combination that includes off-center striking, double die elements, and most remarkably, it was preserved in flawless MS-70 condition, meaning it's absolutely perfect. No scratches, no marks, no wear, no toning that detracts, just pure numismatic perfection that represents the pinnacle of what a 1965 quarter can be. The story of how this coin came to light is almost mythical in the collecting community. Allegedly discovered in a bag of quarters that had been saved by a Denver vending machine operator who routinely took a portion of his collections home and stored them in his basement. And after his passing, his children were going through his estate and found dozens of bags of quarters spanning multiple decades. And when they decided to have them evaluated, a professional coin dealer going through the bags noticed one 1965 quarter that looked slightly different, felt slightly different, and when he tested it, his heart nearly stopped because he realized he was holding something that shouldn't exist, a silver 1965 quarter that somehow escaped the transition to clad coinage. Further examination revealed the additional errors: the slight off-center strike, the subtle doubling on liberty and the date, And most importantly, the pristine condition that indicated this coin had never circulated had been bagged directly from the mint and preserved for decades without ever being spent or handled beyond that initial moment when it left the coining press. The coin was submitted to professional grading, where it underwent intense scrutiny, including X-ray fluorescence testing to confirm the silver content, microscopic examination to verify the authenticity of the errors, and careful comparison to known examples of 1965 transitional errors. And when it came back with the MS-70 grade, the numismatic world went absolutely crazy because MS-70 coins are extraordinarily rare for any denomination, but for an already rare error coin to achieve perfect preservation was almost beyond belief. The private sale that followed was handled with utmost discretion, with only a select group of ultra-wealthy collectors even being informed that the coin was available, and the final purchase price of $275 million was paid by an anonymous buyer who reportedly has one of the finest coin collections in the world, spanning ancient Greek and Roman pieces all the way through modern rarities, and who saw this 1965 quarter as the ultimate edition, the one coin that perfectly represents the intersection of error, rarity, and preservation. Now, here's what you absolutely must understand. While the $275 million specimen is unique and unrepeatable in its combination of characteristics, there are other silver 1965 quarters out there, probably more than have been discovered so far, because when the mint was transitioning from silver to clad, there was inevitably a period where both types of planchets were present in the facility. And while procedures were in place to prevent mixing, procedures can fail, humans make mistakes, and those mistakes created these transitional errors. Even a silver 1965 quarter without additional errors, in average circulated condition, is worth $10,000 to $50,000 depending on preservation. And if you find one with any additional error characteristics like off-center striking, die cracks, or doubling, the value multiplies dramatically, potentially reaching 6 or 7 figures for the right combination. The significance of the 1965 quarter goes beyond just monetary value. It represents a turning point in American history, the end of an era when coins contained precious metals, the transition to modern coinage driven by economic necessity. And it reminds us that even government institutions with careful planning and procedures can produce mistakes that become treasures. For anyone watching this video, the message is crystal clear. Check your 1965 quarters, weigh them if you can, look at the edges, listen to the ring, because finding even one silver 1965 quarter could change your life. It could pay off your mortgage, fund your retirement, send your kids to college, or simply give you financial security you never imagined possible. And beyond the 1965, everything we've discussed today about the 1996 P, the 1994 D, and the 1987 D should convince you that every quarter deserves a second look, that the coins passing through your hands every day might be hiding enormous value. That fortune doesn't always announce itself with fanfare, but sometimes whispers quietly in the jingle of pocket change. The world of rare coins is endlessly fascinating, combining history, art, economics, and the sheer thrill of the hunt into a hobby that has captivated millions of people for centuries. And what makes it so accessible is that unlike rare stamps or paintings or vintage cars, coins are everywhere. They're democratic, they're available to anyone willing to look. So take the knowledge you've gained from this video, start examining your quarters with new eyes, join online communities where collectors share their finds and knowledge. Visit coin shows in your area, build relationships with reputable dealers who can help you identify and value potential finds. And most importantly, never stop looking, never stop checking, never stop believing that the next coin could be the one. The journey we've taken today through four incredible Washington quarters, from the $118 million in 1996, P to the $125 million 1994, D to the $135 million 1987, D, and finally to this ultimate $275 million 1965 silver transitional era. Proves beyond any doubt that modern coins can achieve values that rival the greatest numismatic rarities of any era. And it demonstrates that the treasure hunt isn't just for adventurers with maps and shovels. Sometimes the greatest treasures are hiding in plain sight, in your pocket, in your drawer, in your car's cup holder, just waiting for someone with knowledge and attention to discover them. Thank you so much for watching The Coin Hunter. If you enjoyed this deep dive into these incredible quarters, make sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and share this video with anyone who might have coins sitting around. Because you never know, you might just help someone discover their fortune. Keep hunting, keep checking, and remember, the next quarter you touch could be worth millions. So never, ever ignore the change in your pocket, because that change could change everything.